Welcome back to another episode of The Magician's Call. I'm Dr. Lahab Al-Samarrai. With me today, as always, is Lance Allred, and we're back. So we wanted to open up today's topic with the volcano that erupted near Tonga. So we want to talk about that, and then we want to talk about how that affects us, or does it affect us? It's so far away. So I want to think about how that affects us. Lance, how you doing today?
I'm doing quite well, Lahab. Yeah, it's always good to be back. And I like your theme for today. And let's dive into that vibrational, the concepts of vibration, the concepts of scale, and all those things. Vibration is, I know I'm not speaking anything new to a lot of the listeners, but the space between the nucleus of an atom and the electrons of an atom is so vast that it may as well be empty space. But what's holding it together is the vibrational speed of the electrons around that atom. And so when we're clapping our hands, that's empty space, but what it actually is, the vibration of it, of all those atoms, makes it feel like mass. And so everything, when you get down to that metaphysical level, everything is about vibration and energy. Energy is everything. And vibration is key to not only our energy which we exert in the world, it determines our mental attitude, our physical, and our spiritual. And so whether we are cognizantly aware of it or not, murmurs like that happen on the planet, if it affects one area, the whole is affected by vibration. Think of like, okay, if the earth is one body, if it has a sprained ankle in Tonga with a volcano erupting, the whole system then has to adjust to that new vibrational frequency, whether it's pain or trauma or whatever. If I have a sprained ankle, I suddenly have to favor my other leg to carry that other sprained ankle, and that will set the whole system off balance. And so whether we feel it or not, but like, okay, stock market's crashing, crypto is taking a serious tank. Lots of things are really unknown and unstable right now. But I would say if you're a magician and you're stepping into magician power, you're not indifferent or aloof, but you are neutral to it, meaning that you're not getting caught up in fear, wondering, okay, what's going to happen to me? Because when you're a magician, the myopic lens is no longer in play. That you are really stepping into, how can I be of service? And is my job, my duty is to archetype to hold the balance.
Yeah, I was watching a video of it, of some ecological crews from Tonga, and actually videotaping some of the aftermath of the volcano and the eruption itself. What I found fascinating was how what you're talking about is vibrations that occur across the planet. So in New Zealand and Australia, on the west coast of the US, it was far and wide. But I was also thinking about how you talk about the vibration, talk about how we are on certain vibrational waves. So I think it's more thinking how we are connected on those vibrations. Are we oscillating at the same vibrational level as others, or are we not? And I think that as we get closer to the magician archetype, you start to isolate at a very high level.
Isolate for sure. Yes. Because you become very sensitive to the energy and the vibration of other people. This is not to say that we move about with haughtiness or superiority.
No, we're talking about the vibration, right? This is what we're
Right.
talking about.
Exactly. And that's something that I just want to be very clear, though, people who are
Yeah.
listening, is not that I'm looking at other people saying, oh, I'm better than you because I've done the work and you haven't. No, that completely defeats the whole purpose of what the work is.
Mm.
It is being able to understand, okay, not only am I unfriending more people on social media because their vibrational posts are not in alignment with what I'm about, but I am also spending less time myself on social media to the point that it has been 7 days since I last got on social media and I haven't even noticed
Mm.
that my vibration is now, I am focusing more on aligning with what spirit or creation has in store for me
Mm.
and not what other people's perception of me determine what I should be doing next.
Mm.
And I will admit, I am an addict to praise. We
Mm.
all have the addict archetype. My
Mm.
addiction is praise and validation,
Mm.
approval.
Mm.
And I have jeopardized many relationships in the past for that drug. And so moving into a space where I found it interesting
Talk a little bit more about that, Lance.
about which area.
No, about how sacrificing, sa-
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
losing
sacrifice
relationships in
relationships.
that
Yeah.
context.
So I think a good benchmark of whether you're an addict or not is like, okay, people just focus on drugs, alcohol, and pornography is like the three basic ones. They think that's all the addicts are addicted to.
Gambling.
No. Yeah, gambling. Thank you. But we're all addicts. Everyone has the addict archetype.
Oh,
It's
sure.
just that some are more societally, socially acceptable. I say that with air marks, I mean with air quotes, that because Lance likes to work hard, I'm addicted to work because that will then get me approval and praise.
Mm.
That when someone is a gambling addict and they're in the throes of it, or a drug addict, they will lie and neglect and even sacrifice their most important relationships for that drug.
Mm.
They will steal from their parents to
Mm.
get that drug high, right?
Yeah.
So it's not the actual theft of the money, it's the willingness to sabotage or sacrifice your most important relationships for that next fix.
Mm.
And there are many relationships I've had where I had a choice. Okay, I can spend time with someone that needs me, that cares about me, or I can go work some more wanting approval from all of these unknown entities out there in the world who comment on social media or the internet, and I want them to say nice things about me.
Mm.
That gives me a dopamine high.
Mm.
I grew up in the age of the chat rooms,
Mm.
of the birth of the chat rooms in the 90s, and where people started being brutal. And
Mm.
people are shocked about how brutal social media is. I'm like, I've been chat rooms were 15 years before that.
Mm.
And they were more brutal than what social media is.
Yeah.
And so with that, and with the hearing loss and the bullying and the being the youngest and the latchkey kid growing up, um, not really being seen by my parents who had a lot of stuff on their plate, I was conditioned that no one had time for my emotions or my feelings. That if I wanted to be seen, I had to be contributing, I had to be doing something that they could say, good job.
Mm.
That's all I could really get was a good job.
Mm.
So that's what I would go for, good job.
Yeah.
And so that then went with me into my adult life where I wanted the good job. And I hated stat sheets. I hated how people thought they could measure my self-worth based on a stat line that night.
Yeah.
But then when they came and patted me on the back and said, good job, it's like, oh yeah, I got my dopamine high. And that's where the addict are on that threshold. They hate what they're addicted to, but when they go in the shadow, they need it.
Yeah.
And so with that addict archetype of
Mm.
needing
You're
approval and
constantly chasing the high.
chasing the high.
That's
Absolutely.
the path. There's no other path. That's all you wake up to.
And here is a way I have defined addiction.
Mm.
An addiction is any one coping skill that has run the monopoly over all other coping skills that you
Correct.
have.
Yeah.
So let's, for example, there are some people I know that are addicted to meditation. Meaning, if they can't meditate today, the rest of their day is gone to shit. That they are monsters. Mr. Hyde comes out. And that tells me, oh, you have an addiction to meditation because you have no other resources or coping mechanisms to help you self-soothe and center yourself. And so the great athlete, if I'm saying, oh, I only have one go-to move, I become very easy to guard. And I get very frustrated because people are resisting me. It's my job to develop several other skills so I am versatile and I can keep continuing to play the game. But when I have one skill / when I am addicted to one outlet, I then get frustrated with life or the game because I have no other resources or coping skills that will help me self-soothe. I can only now rely on that one that gives me that dopamine high. And then I feel good for just a little bit. And so I tell you, we're all addicts and we all have that one coping skill that we all really want to lean on. And it's your challenge is to always be clear on that and say, okay, I really want to lean on that today. It's time for me to develop some of my other coping skills to allow me to be cerebral to keep playing this game of life, because it's a game, it's a chessboard, and the universe does not suffer one-dimensional folk very well at all.
Correct. And I think this all stems, as you put it, it stems from the way that we grew up in the world and how we how we started to understand or experience what value is,
Right.
how we are valued, or how things are valued, or how money is valued, or how relationship is valued, or how loyalty is valued, all these things. And I think this is where kind of the breaches or the traumas occur in early life, because the child is naturally curious, attached, connected, interactive, and forgiving. And I think when we rupture those things, when there's trauma that occurs in those areas, that's when there's this propensity to compensate. And addiction is a propensity to compensate for loss.
Yes.
So when we've lost something, we have a propensity to compensate. So if we've lost somebody that we love or care for, we might find a different way to mourn that person.
Right.
That doesn't mean we have stopped mourning. We just mourn in a different way, which becomes toxic in itself, because everything is finite and limited, as you put it. You cannot do one thing over everything else and expect that everything is going to be okay. It's not. Something is off whack. Something is out of balance. And in general, we're out of balance.
Right. Right. And so that goes to always being clear, and that's a good benchmark. If you want to rely on just one outlet, your vibrational frequency is then, I would tell you, at a very low level, because you're not firing at all cylinders.
You're not you're not able to grasp everything that's coming at you at the same time, because you're distracted.
Yes, absolutely. And when you're distracted, the thing is, your boundaries are then breached. They're non-existent, really, because you're not centered, you're not present. And because your vibrational frequency is low, it then becomes a nasty feedback loop of other people's vibration breaching your energy field and you taking on their energetic vibrations. And then you keep going lower, you keep getting lower. Then you're like, I'm overwhelmed with everyone else's bullshit. I can't even take care of mine. I need to have that glass of wine. And you've seen this trend, especially with the pandemic and quarantine, that it's suddenly trendy and cool to always have a glass of wine in your hand. Oh, I'm a mom. I'm overwhelmed with my kids. Cheers. I'm a single dad. I'm overwhelmed with my kids. I need a drink. And everyone says, oh, yeah, I hear you, buddy. That's cool. Self-soothe. But alcohol sales are up 300% since quarantine began.
Mm.
And so we are, therefore, because we're at home and we're quarantined and we're coming out of quarantine now, we got so embedded in fear and seeing everyone else's fear on social media and TV, and the Black Lives Matter exploded. That's one benefit, though. It did bring awareness to some social issues that we would not have noticed. But at the same time, because we were in fear at a low vibration, we then allowed a lot of other energetic vibrations to come into our field, which then gave us so much overwhelm that we then, at this low vibration, were not firing at all cylinders. And we started developing or going back or reverting back to addictive behavior, giving us that one outlet to help us numb ourselves for just a minute, rather than, again, giving ourselves multiple outlets to not numb ourselves, but to vibrate ourselves higher above it.
Yeah. So I think what happened was is that the people were, the population were driven like a herd. They were
Yeah.
driven to work. They had to work, otherwise they couldn't feed themselves. And suddenly, you didn't have to work.
Mhm.
You actually could be at home.
Mhm.
And then they didn't know what to do because they're not driven. You're correct. You have to kind of tune into that vibration, but most people are not vibrating.
No.
That vibration is not something they recognize. I mean, it would have to be like, um, I think this is why the Tonga volcano is so symbolic.
Yeah.
It's like this volcano when erupted, it's like a nuclear explosion when a volcano erupts.
Yeah, it is.
And the rest of the world is in this daze where you have the Russians trying to invade Ukraine. There's war afoot in Europe. There's all these other kind of low level vibrations that are not clear, that
Mhm.
are muddled.
Right.
Mm.
Um, and here is the magician's call at a time like this, that we can ride the roller coaster with everybody else, high and low, high and low. But the athlete in me is this: I am only as good as the beat that I keep through it all. That throughout my professional career, wherever I went, when they played me at least 28 minutes a game, I averaged 16 points and 10 rebounds. If people can understand what it takes to average 16 and 10 in 28 minutes, that means you're not going to have the same shots every game. You're not going to have the same plays every game, but that you find a way throughout everyone else's madness, everyone else's emotions, to keep your beat, never attaching your worth to any immediate outcome, knowing your truth is never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems. That you keep your beat, holding the balance for the rest of your team. That is profoundly, that is leader archetype, but that's also magician. Being able to hold everything stable, hold that middle spot, while everyone else is going through the gamut of emotions, while the warrior and the lovers and everyone else is riding that roller coaster of emotions. It's the magician's job to be able to see all of these variables and quickly discern, okay, what is the most immediate one that needs my attention? And knowing what I can get to in a little bit, and one that isn't even worth my attention because it's not even about me.
Mm.
Those are, I can't stress enough, those are crucial skills of emotional intelligence, of being able to discern, okay, that's not even about me. I don't even have to let that vibration into my space. And once you get better at not only protecting your space against those attacks that breach, you're also better at being efficient and understanding what is even going to be allowed to even be in my proximity to breach me.
Mm.
And that is what separates the pros from the rookies in
Mm,
sports. Now, the rookies get all upset over the ref making a bad call every single time. Now, sure, like as we saw Tom Brady last weekend, he got his first penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct in 18 years or 20 years of football.
mm,
That's not to say that we don't have times where we really like, hey, that's messed up, dude. But that what separates him, he's not always riding the wave. And so what separates the pro really is being able to control what you can control, but more importantly, humans are addicted with the child archetype because the child has very limited context. The child thinks they are the center of the world.
mm,
That's all their brain can conceive because their
mm,
limited perception, that is the world, their immediate world. But a lot of people still go into adulthood seeing on social media or whatnot, thinking they're entitled to express their opinion. That is the child wanting to insert themselves into every single piece of drama because they want to be the center of the drama.
mm,
And again, that is an addiction. That is the shadow archetype of the child, to be caught in the drama to get attention from parents who aren't paying attention to them, because that is their one coping skill to get someone else to see them, to give them attention, which becomes a dopamine hit. So they're able to soothe now that someone else is paying attention to them. That in itself is an addiction.
mm. Yeah, and when we go back to the magician and um, they're vibrating at a higher level, it just means that their ability to recognize the vibration is at a higher level.
Yes.
They can recognize it very easily. They are more apt to be very much aware of the eruption in Tonga and how it affects the world
Mhm.
than anything else.
Mhm. I think it is indicative to being able to see all the variables at play and understanding major seismic tectonic shifts like that have an energetic effect. Just as we know, even the most atheist doctors will tell you that the full moon, the ER is nuts.
Mhm,
They will say that. So that
mhm,
if our body subconsciously is affected by the gravitational pull of the moon,
mhm,
why then wouldn't our body, at least more subliminally, be affected by the gravitational pull of Jupiter, which is 11 times the size of our planet?
mhm,
That's me going to my astrological concepts. That'll be for another time. But in that same vibrational context, it is also understanding, okay, if the moon is able to affect our sleep cycles, our menstrual cycles, all other emotions that we're feeling, and have us lose our mind on the full moon and act like crazy people and do stupid things and get our head split open and go to the ER, why then wouldn't a massive volcano eruption at the other side of the world that is sending ripple and shockwaves through the entire Pacific also going to affect some vibrational frequency that will then actually reach us at an
mhm.
energetic level?
Yeah.
And so this really is this is where I go. And it's not bad to have these thoughts that, if you notice, if you look at an atom, our solar system looks a lot like an atom.
Mhm,
You have the sun that is the nucleus, and then you have these electrons spinning all around it.
mhm,
So who's to say that our solar system is not an atom in someone else's hand at a different vibration, at a different
mhm,
scale and frequency? Just because it's funny, I think again, in our myopia, in our limited concepts as a human brain, we can only process so much,
mhm,
but we can only feel certain megahertz on a scale. We can only see certain megahertz of light and colors. There are billions upon trillions of other different types of colors that we will never see.
mhm.
Snails are able to perceive like 11 times more colors than we humans are, yet our brain can't even process what another color would look like.
Did you say
Bec-
snails?
Snails.
Yeah. Okay.
Snail. It's
Okay.
fascinating.
I did not know that, but okay. Tell me more about this. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, there's a scientific study showing that the snail has different rods in its eyes that
Yeah.
allow it to perceive different megahertz of colors.
Fascinating.
And so the human brain can't even process what would another color actually look like.
Mm.
Yet in our myopia, we think this is the only scale of colors that the universe operates with.
Uh-huh.
No.
Yeah.
And so this is where my brain goes, and this is why it's healthy to go here, because then it gets me out of self-centeredness, where I'm worried about me and my immediate needs all the time. It lets me see the universe is such a bigger grand design than me. And on this limited scale, on this specific chessboard, at this specific vibration of X amount of megahertz to X amount of megahertz, my higher consciousness is playing this game on this scale, while it's likely playing other games on different scales too.
Yeah.
That this avatar Lance is not like the one and only extension of my higher consciousness, which is an extension of the universe itself.
Yeah.
And so this goes into this vibration concept of understanding, okay, there are so many vibrational levels that are beyond our perception,
Yeah.
but that even in our game, there's a vibrational levels. I think the Hawkins scale is pretty fascinating, but the lowest is like jealousy or greed. The highest vibration you can have is gratitude.
Mm.
And really, if you want to play the game well, you have to ask, okay, short picture, do you want to be right or do you want to win the game? That's me going back to athletics. I could be right and say my piece to the official and tell him what's for and get ejected, but walk off on my high horse being right, but losing the game. Or I can say, all right, and laugh and chuckle and let him think he won the game, let him think he's right. But really, I then will be the one winning the game at the end.
Mm.
That is the magician's trickery that we have to learn to master, understanding whenever I commit to a vibrational frequency, I am either expanding my resources or limiting my resources.
Yeah.
And so the question the magician always has to ask, do I want to be right or do I want to win?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where the split between dark magicians and the magicians of the light happens. The dark magician will say, I always need to win.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes a problematic, because that's when you associate yourself with the shadow,
Right.
that you are greater than anytime you feel you have a superiority
Yes.
of enormous content, then you are inflated by the universe.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
but you are not bigger than the universe. The universe is going to chop you down to size. It just wants you to
Absolutely.
float in the air for a while.
Absolutely. I would say that is the mythological story that we love of Icarus flying too close to the sun, that we have to
Mm,
understand myths. We understand them at some subconscious universal level.
mm,
That we understand Anakin Skywalker in Star
mm.
Wars.
Yeah,
He was that same metaphor that he thought he became bigger than the force itself.
yeah,
So when I say winning, there's obviously we have to redefine winning. What does it mean? So as you said, brilliant. The shadow archetype of magician says, I want to win for my own gain.
yeah,
Enlightened archetype of magician says, I or we want to win for the greater whole, because I am
yeah,
only in service of the
yeah,
whole, no longer about me.
yeah,
And I can say this with absolute certainty. And I know some people probably think I'm bluffing, but there are times, and I'm not always there, but there are times when I am meditating or working on my vibration and really stepping into magician archetype, seeing things from a universal consciousness, that it was really be like, okay, if it was my time to die in service of the greater whole, I would understand that.
mm.
Because I know this isn't the end of the game.
No, it's just a step.
It's a step. And so when you're vibrating at a higher level, you no longer see the many deaths of our psyche, but you also no longer see the finite death of my avatar as the end.
Mm.
It's just a step.
It's a step. Yeah.
And so when that's another gauge to ask. When you're afraid of death, that means you're not seeing the bigger picture and you're at a low vibration.
Yeah. It's a step in infinity, because
Yes.
that's how many steps that are required to continue with the universe, because the
Mhm.
universe is infinite and continues to expand.
Mhm.
So we are part of the universe and we continue to expand. We're continually infinite as we recognize that certain aspects of the way the if you take a look at the interior of the eye, the iris, you get to see the universe, a reflection of the universe. If
Mhm.
you look at a mole very closely, you start to see different parts of the universe. You
Mhm.
are always experiencing the universe. We are an echo of what the universe is,
Right.
and it is an echo of us. It's we are one with the universe
Mhm.
as energy. We we know that it can neither be created nor destroyed. So we know that this is our essence,
Mhm.
and our essence can't be destroyed. It changes,
Yes.
and but just as how you put it, even in the game, the energy changes. Maybe
Mhm.
we don't transform physically, but our understanding of the game transforms. As time passes by and you have less time to look at, you're not concerned about how you're winning. You're just concerned that you just want to get the upper hand. You
Yeah.
don't care if it's by 10 points or 3 points, it's all points. You just need
Yeah.
a point to get over. So your conception, your transformation during the game occurs as your recognition, your consciousness of the game changes.
Yes. And that now here's an interesting benchmark. I I had someone send me a message request. I didn't see the whole thing, but I read the first part of it, and they said, "Well, don't you think it's unfair that you're claiming to be the first legally deaf player in the NBA when so and so was deaf in one ear?" So what was interesting, that's all I saw was. I didn't read the whole message because I get a lot of messages from people.
Mm.
And I researched this person, and in fact, this man was deaf in one ear, but he had full hearing in the other ear. But in the 1950s, brilliant man. I'm inspired by him.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known about him. I'm sad I didn't know about him till now. But what's interesting, Lahab, is that this person was then coming at me, attacking a big part of my persona that I have let die.
Mm.
Like the motivational speaker, what's my niche, what's my story, the first legally deaf player in the NBA. That when I was in that stage of survival, transitioning from basketball, trying to be a single father, supporting my son, I had to put so much effort into marketing and growing that brand, that message, so I could make the right amount of income to support my son. And motivational speaking is how I did it for the last 7 years.
Mm.
But as I've been working through new stages, there have been many deaths even in that cycle. But there's another one where, like, hey, if people want me to come speak, I'll come speak, but it's no longer important to me. One, I've reached a point where it's not even worth my time because you're working on referrals now. But I didn't have social media until I retired, and I got caught in that game for my own profession to raise that awareness. But now that I'm moving into other things, finding retreats and working with people in trauma one on one, far more fulfilling and far more my wheelhouse than speaking in front of thousands of people, which again is something I'll always do. But what I'm getting at, it was a good barometer that someone went out of their way to track me down, to try to undercut me.
Mm.
and the claim to fame and the challenges that I've had, and saying, yeah, you're not as important as you say you are. That's basically what they were saying. And
Mm.
it didn't even bother me because that's no longer a game that I'm playing.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is that how are you supposed to know who has an ear problem, who
I
has
don't.
one hearing aid, one? Yeah,
Yeah.
we're talking about the modern NBA and
Yeah.
what they have chosen to recognize and who they've chosen to recognize.
Right.
And they've chosen to recognize you. That's a different, I think
Yeah.
that's a different barometer. It wasn't
It is.
you kind of like blowing
No.
yourself up into a
No.
balloon that floated away. It was, this
No.
was,
The NBA gave me that moniker. Yes.
this is a moniker that was given to you and you
Right.
took it. Well,
Yeah.
it's like, after, you've earned something and somebody says, okay, this is your new thing. You're
Yeah.
Dr. So-and-so. Okay, so I'll be
Right.
Dr. So-and-so for a while
Right.
until that no longer works.
Right.
And I want to be so-and-so or something else, but I think that's a little harsh. I think the person
But what's
who
funny
reached
though,
out to you,
it is harsh. But here's the thing: is
yeah,
when you're an empowered magician archetype, it's funny.
yeah.
It's funny that you can say, okay, well, it's kind of apropos timing that as I'm moving into another stage in my life, that
Yes,
someone wants to come in from behind and throw a ping pong ball at me, so to speak, and say, "Oh, you're not as accomplished as you say you are." Again, there's
that's how the
from the
universe gets your attention, right? The universe
exactly,
is like, do you know where you're going, or are you still holding on to the past?
exactly,
What are you
and
going to fight for?
so when I got the message, I chuckled. I'm like, "Oh, that's actually quite funny with the timing, given the timing of things and how things are moving in my life and where I'm going from here."
Yeah.
That again, I didn't take it personally. That I viewed it more like, okay, that was like a little check to see, have I really let that persona go? That yes, there will always be a part of me there, just like there will always be the inner child that will still be a part of me. Those all those facets, all those facets will always be a part of me. But is that where I'm staying, as you say, in the past, or am I moving and flowing with where life is sending me? And able to let those things go. And so going back, but that brings up the challenge of the addict archetype too, wanting people to validate me or praise me. And was I triggered, and did I want to get them to suddenly like me and try to explain everything to them and have them say, okay, you are doing a good job? Or could I say, oh, but I don't need that fix anymore because I have plenty of other resources at my disposal to help me self-soothe and be centered throughout the day.
I think that's important. I think it's important that you're able to come to that consciousness. I think it's really important that you were able to go through that process. I think in that process that you are talking about, where you had to reflect on who am I, what am I doing, where am I going, um, which road am I taking? Is this a road I still want to hold on to?
Mhm.
So you've expressed all those things on the podcast. You've expressed how much of a process you went through, and that just shows transformation. And
Mhm.
what we talk about transformation. That's what shows transformation. Transformation is being able to put all these tiny pieces together
Right.
into one pot, and then
Mhm.
something else miraculously appears out of the stew, and you're like, wow, it tastes like so and so. I didn't think it was
Yeah.
going to taste like this. I thought it was
Absolutely.
going to taste like that. And so what you get, and this is the alchemical process, you get something different. So each vibrating version of Lance
Mhm.
is going to be different, and over
Absolutely.
time that's how it's supposed to be, and the magician needs to be. The
Mhm.
magician, once they're stagnant, once they are, just to pick up a point that you make all the time, once they no longer are observant of where they need to be or
Mhm.
what they need to be observant of, they are lost.
Yes.
They are stuck.
Mhm.
They are single-minded and obsessed and no longer able to move in any direction. So the magician makes the worst addict, by the way.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
that's what we kind of were going in that direction, but
The magician, because again, the shadow of the magician is obsession.
yes,
Obsession is a definite shadow. And so I'm going to say some people call the magician and the mystic are basically the same thing.
yes,
That the mystic is one who seeks for complete unification with the divine, with source, with spirit itself. And the shadow of the mystic is the addict, because here's what the two archetypes say. The magician, no, I'm sorry, the addict says, I feel so much at vibrational and emotional levels that I don't want to feel it anymore and I want to check out. I need my fix. The magician on the other side of that token says, I feel so much and I am brave enough to feel it all.
yes. I must feel it all.
I must feel it all.
I have to, otherwise I don't live. I am not who I am.
Yes.
Right? It's the way to recognize yourself. It's the way you're talking about, thinking about, reflecting on who you are. That
And that
reflection in itself is that big part.
it is. And that's what, if you want an example, not to put myself on a pedestal, but Lahab spelled it out for you. That is what it means when you're doing the work. This is what self-development really is. A lot of people are so turned on to the concept of self-development, emotional intelligence, because there's no real trophy. My one reward, my trophy, as Lahab said, was that moment of, aha, I can look back and say, oh, look at that integration where I'm no longer so obsessed with that one persona of me needing people to validate me and giving me a dopamine fix. That's my trophy. That's my plaque on the wall. And for some people, they're like, wait, I want more than that. But the internal alchemy, that is when you move into that clarity, you keep seeking further and further clarity. Clarity is a currency that the magician deals with. That's how they exchange. That's the currency that they strive for. And that vibrational level of being
Clarity is
able,
also the biggest treasure they pass on to others.
absolutely, absolutely, 100%. And once you step into that way of life, you wouldn't trade it for anything else. And that's not to say that we're not going to have bad days. There's not going to be some days like, oh gosh, I played poorly today. Trust me, as a pro basketball player, not every game is going to be your best game. But here's the thing. If you can say when you lay down your head at night, I made more good plays than bad plays, you're
Mm,
doing a good job.
mm,
And some days you're like, man, I killed it today. I was on
mm,
fire. I was in the zone all day long.
mm,
And some days you're like, man, I just laid an egg.
mm.
But you know what? I still got up and I kept playing and I had a few good passes, had a few good screens. That's okay. But that is, you have to understand there is no, it's not this attainment to perfection. And perfection is such a stupid concept.
Well, it's also an addiction.
It is an addiction. And here's why it's a flawed addiction. Perfection entails an end of progression.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a stupid
Like,
concept.
like there's a finality in it.
Exactly.
This is why plastic surgery becomes
An
so
addiction.
detrimental.
Yeah.
It's because they're addicted to some kind of perfection that they will never
Mhm.
reach.
It can't be reached. The
Yeah,
universe itself defies perfection.
yeah,
It is the antithesis of it. It is an
yeah,
experiment.
yeah.
You cannot have perfection and an experiment or progression. Progression and perfection are diametrically opposed.
Yeah. Well,
And
perfection is a solid, it's a
concept,
solidified,
idea or concept or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
It stops vibrating.
Mhm.
Let's put it that way, which
That's
doesn't work
vibrating.
in this universe.
That's a
We're
perfect word.
energy.
Perfection is the stoppage of vibration. I think
Yeah,
that's a perfect, using the word perfect, no pun
yeah,
intended,
yeah,
perfect way to use it.
yeah.
Very well said. And so, therefore, when you step out of the addiction of perfection, you then become the master game player
Yeah,
because you are willing to take risk, you're
yeah,
willing to experiment, you're willing to step into the energy of trial and error, not attaching your worth to any outcome. knowing again that perfection is the end of vibration, and that's nowhere
Yeah.
near you want to be.
No, you don't want to be there. You
No,
don't want to be there because nothing exists on that plane. That plane
no,
is dead.
right.
That plane is static.
Hmm.
That plane is not where you ever want to be. It
Hmm.
is it is the antithesis of, as you said, the way the universe works.
Hmm. Yes. And so I think that is an important spot to be at, that the vibrational energy of perfection is dead. It's not even vibrating. And yet we still are trying to reach some holding space where we want everything to stop. I want to get to heaven when we die and everything will stop in this state where I am happy, my friends and family are all around me, and no one changes, nothing happens. We all stay
Yeah.
the same
Yeah, we
forever.
all stay the same and everything is great and
Yeah.
nothing else changes and nobody else dies and nobody else is born and nobody else falls in love and everybody stays with everybody else, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And so when things are no longer progressing, things have ceased to be.
Yeah.
And therefore everything will be dead. You
Yeah.
won't even
Yeah.
be existent.
Yeah, well, that's the whole concept of not moving forward.
Absolutely.
It's dying because
Hmm.
we are constantly moving forward because we're transforming. We're
Hmm.
transforming from one idea. I think Lance gave a beautiful example talking about the DM message he got, but um, it's an example of how process and life and changes and ideas and thoughts, words
Hmm.
transform.
Values transform.
They
Yeah.
transform over time. They transform. I mean, it was, if I still held to the concept that I was the smartest kid in sixth grade, I'd still be in sixth
You would never
grade.
grow. Yeah, you would never
I would
grow.
never leave that sixth grade. I would still have to be competing with sixth graders.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Right. Very, very
And if I
true.
never got over the idea that I was a professional ball player, I'd be making a fool of myself because
Absolutely.
I physically no longer can do what I used to be able to do.
Hmm.
So I'll make a complete tool of myself. If
Yes.
I can't hold the idea that somebody is smarter, better looking, taller, has a better shot than I do, I will never get over the idea that once I was actually good looking and I had a nice jump shot and I was the person they looked to.
Hmm.
You
Right.
know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You lose that sense of
Hmm.
liveliness in
The
that
vibration.
taste of the moment
Yeah.
that becomes bitter.
Absolutely. It becomes bitter because you're stuck in the fall,
Ooh,
meaning that the seasons change. That when you lose out on the jovial energy of rebirth of the spring, when
yes.
flowers are reborn, you lose out on that essence of life, and life has to have those seasonal changes of death and rebirth. And when you are refusing to go into that cycle, you become stale and become bitter.
Yeah. And you don't make room for others to come into that light.
No.
That light is not yours.
Mhm.
That light was given. It's part of the universal fact of existence. Once it's time for you to kind of move out of the light, let others in the light.
Mhm.
Others need to come into the light. This is how it
Absolutely.
works. This is how the process works.
Mhm. That, I think that's beautifully well said. That my time and my experiences in basketball, while I had to work hard for them, I was also programmed and inspired to work hard for them as an extension of the universe to help it have more information of the human experience.
Yeah.
So therefore, it is not mine to hold on to.
No, usually not.
And just like any good business partner or any good friend who reciprocates, if you say, thank you, universe, I now let this go, that you can give this light, this vibrational light of the basketball experience and arenas and that time with you in the zone that they become so attached to you. I'm going to let you now give that experience to another aspect or another human or extension of you. That means that's showing the universe, okay, he's a good business partner. That as I let go of that light, that vibration, I then know that the universe can trust me to give me another experience of light that I won't be greedy with, that I won't hold on to, that I
Yeah.
will keep the energetic flow like a hydraulic system, the electrical grid of a dam. You got to keep that energy flowing to keep it alive.
Yeah.
And that is how you become a massive catalyst and conduit for change, but also raising the vibrational level when you can let energy come through you and not thinking it's yours to hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah. And light travels as waves, right?
Yes.
So basically they're waves that we ride, and they're waves that we need to move towards. And
Mhm.
those are different waves.
Yes. And while we may have beautiful moments in certain ways, again,
Amazing.
amazing moments, and you
Mhm.
look back and you always have the nostalgia and remember them fondly, it is not our right to be selfish or greedy with it and hold on to it, because that's when the stoppage flows. That's when the vibrational energy currency is blocked. And that's when you get stuck in the bitterness in one dimensional vibration. And therefore, you have cut off, again, all energetic flow in that vibration. That's a very important thing to hold on to and understand. I like that you opened up this concept that it isn't, vibration is not ours to capture and think it's something to hold on to or that we can duplicate or recreate ourselves. Is simply allowing yourself to be that little fuse, that cylinder of fuse that the universe plugs me into certain little circuit boards, knowing that I am a very unique entity, a very unique avatar, and it will put me in the right circuit boards to vibrate higher, to help a space or a machine or an area or on planet Earth vibrate higher, knowing it has full permission to then take me out there and put me in a different one. And if that's all I really am, what an honor it is to be that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because once you're able to think that way, then you're free.
Yes.
The problem is there's no freedom when you're stuck.
No, it's funny. There's no freedom when you're stuck. And I love the concept of how we are so beholden to our concept of freedom as the United States of America that we're no longer free to be who we really want to be.
Yeah, we're arguing about the term free.
Exactly. And the
But
magician just kind of laughs and just says,
yeah,
okay, guys, whatever.
because you're lost in the maze.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
don't see it anymore. You forgot it
Yeah.
was a maze. You forgot
Yeah.
somebody let you in. You forgot
Yeah.
you were participating in it. You
Mhm.
forgot you were one of, you tried to control it. You tried to
Mhm.
hold on to it. As soon as you try to control the universe, as soon as
Mhm.
you try to hold on to the universe,
Right.
then you end up being the person who is stuck within the maze, can't
Absolutely.
find their way out.
That as soon as you thought you could appropriate the universe or God to fit into your narrative, to fit into your perception, to fit into your construct,
Mm.
that's when you lost again.
Well,
That's when,
yes, because you lost the tether that keeps you connected to the outside. Once
absolutely.
you lose the tether, you're like, oh, where am
Mhm.
I? Oh, I'm
Absolutely.
supposed to be here. So I'm gonna control this bitch. But
Mhm.
that's not yours.
No,
Yeah.
not.
All right. With that, Lance, as always, a pleasure. You want to say anything as we sign off?
I've enjoyed this episode a lot. It's felt vibrationally high, and that's what we're talking about. And that's the thing
Yeah.
is when people say, "How do you raise your vibration?" I'm like, one, just talk about it. Talk
Yeah.
about your vibration, and that'll help raise your vibration
Yeah.
because you'll
Yeah.
become cognizantly aware. It's like, okay, let me check in with my body and actually just listen to my body. Let me stop thinking, get in my body. Where am I uncomfortable in my body? I want to stay in my head because my body hurts. I'm trying to
Yeah.
cut off those communications. Let's
Yeah.
get in my body and take care of it. It's the same thing. Where am I vibrating at? Okay, I'm vibrating low. Okay, why am I vibrating low? Because I'm operating in fear. What story has me stuck in fear that I can address? Don't judge yourself for ever vibrating at a low level. It's just a good gauge to say, okay, I'm fatigued or I'm not. I have abandoned some of my fundamentals for the day. How can I get back on track? There's
Mm,
nothing to beat ourselves up. This is not dogma that we're talking about.
mm.
These are healthy circuit breakers that we have to get us back into alignment so we can operate efficiently in the game.
So with that, I want to remind everybody that Lance, myself, and Christy are going to be teaching a course on the archetypes. And we would love for you all to join us and learn more about a lot of the subject matter that we talk about on the podcast, but an in-depth view of how the archetypal energies move in the world. So we invite you to go to the instituteforconflict.com, Institute for Conflict, just one word, and .com. And then on the websites on the first page, you'll see the sign up for the archetypal course with myself, Lance, and Christy Foster. With that, I am Dr. Lahab Al-Samarrai, and this is the podcast for The Magician's Call, and we will be back next week with another episode. Until then.